Hello my amazing people, and welcome back to my channel. If you're back, if you are new, welcome to my channel. I'm Shayna, and today I will be talking to you about the missing persons case of Gabrielle Petito. I first heard about this case on Twitter. I actually didn't hear about it directly. Someone had tweeted something along the lines of, in what world can a man go on a trip with his fiance, return without her, and nothing happened from that, like no consequences come from that. And I was trying to figure out what this tweet was about, so I googled missing person road trip fiance, and this case popped up. And when I figured out that it was about Gabby Petito, I dived into the case, and there's so many questions. This isn't any missing persons investigation. This is a very current missing persons investigation, a very current case that's happening as we speak. There's a lot to unpack today. I will try my best to make it as clear and easy to follow as possible, but there are quite a few parts to the story that I'll be sharing with you. Please let me know what you think about this story down in the comment section below. There are a lot of opinions on this case, and I'm very interested to hear what you have to say, what you think about it. But without further ado, thank you so much for joining me today, and let's get started. Gabby Petito is a 22-year-old woman who, at the time of this case, had been living in Florida with her 23-year-old fiance, Brian Laundrie. At the end of June, the couple had been in Gabby's hometown, actually in New York, in Blue Point, and they were there because Gabby was helping to celebrate her younger brother's high school graduation. But the two of them were extremely excited because they were getting ready to embark on this grand adventure across the country. They were planning to go on a road trip. They had been planning this for some time and were looking forward to it because this trip was a substitute in some ways for their wedding. They had been engaged, but due to the current state of the world, this health crisis that we are in, they weren't able to have a ceremony that they wanted. So they decided that they were going to hop in a van, in a Ford Transit van that Gabby owned, and take a road trip that was a trip basically that had no end in sight. It was going to be an adventure. It wasn't just a 1 week or a 2 week ordeal. They were going to go and they were just going to enjoy their time, enjoy their life. Gabby actually quit her job to go on this road trip and to start this van life kind of dream that she had, and she planned to document it all alongside her fiance, Brian. July 2nd was the date of departure, and they left from New York and began this trip across the United States. They stopped in Kansas, they stopped in Colorado, they stopped in Utah, and Gabby kept everything very well documented. She posted on her social media, she updated everyone on her social media as well as her family, and it was kind of a cool thing to see because the trip was beautiful. I mean, she not only took pictures, but she also vlogged it on her YouTube channel, and it was just this picturesque, beautiful trip that was accented by this beautiful romance at the same time. Like, her and Brian's relationship seemed very cute and very loving and very special. Like, the connection that they had was very special, and the backdrop of this beautiful experience and travel and this amazing trip just made it seem like something that every person would want to do at some point in their life. And Gabby seems like this personality that a lot of young girls would want to be like. She, in some ways, her account on Instagram, you can still go look at it. She looks like an influencer. She's beautiful. She has this really cool and fashionable way of dressing. She has this picture perfect relationship. She has amazing scenery to take pictures in front of. She's fit. It just seems like very similar to the Alexis Sharkey case. And obviously they're two different women, but the lives that they portray on their social media were similar. They are lives that most young girls would look up to and say, it'd be pretty cool to be like her one day. And all throughout the month of July, she is posting pictures on her Instagram, beautiful pictures, and it seems like the trip is going really well. After the first month, the couple are still on the road and they have an encounter with the police in Moab, Utah, who find that the two of them have been in a physical dispute. Gabby was visibly upset and Brian had scratches on his face and on his neck and on his hands, and the both of them said that the argument started from something very small. Brian got into their van without cleaning his feet. He had dirt and sand on his feet, and Gabby admits that she kind of had a little bit of OCD and this bothered her, and it caused this argument to escalate, and she got upset and she hit Brian a few times. And the couple was driving extremely fast when the police stopped them, and because they were actually physically fighting inside of the van while they were driving, when the police put their lights on, it startled them, and somehow the van jerked really hard and ran up on the curb. So police actually questioned them about this, and they could tell that there had been some sort of altercation, whether it be verbal or physical, but when they questioned them about this, they admitted that they were having a quarrel in the car. And Gabby was actually very forthcoming. She explained that she had OCD, that she had anxiety, and that she got upset with Brian sometimes. And she kind of said that she felt like she was more mean than she should be sometimes because there were things that would bother her. And given that this couple had been on a road trip for over a month at this point, we are looking at August 12th. It's reasonable to assume that tensions will probably run high sometimes when you are literally trapped in a van with one person for an extended period of time. But nevertheless, the two of them had an altercation, but the police didn't make an arrest in this situation. They just put Brian in a hotel for the night, let Gabby go on her way, and just told the two of them that they could reconvene in the morning, but they needed to stay separated and let their tempers go down for the rest of that day. On the body cam footage, you can see that Gabby admits to hitting Brian a few times, and Brian tells police that Gabby hit him a few times. And there were some mental health experts who analyzed this video and kind of talked about the mental health status of both of them, and I'm not well versed or at any liberty to speak on that part of it, but I will say that some experts believe that the dynamic between Gabby and Brian is a relationship where the victim is taking responsibility for the abuser. So it seems like to some mental health experts, Gabby is actually the one being abused, but to protect her abuser, she is saying that she is the one doing the abusing. So again, I don't have any expertise to be able to speak or to expand on that. However, that is something to be aware of that I found in doing my research for this case. Gabby and Brian continue their trip, and on August 25th, Gabby makes her last Instagram post, which is a picture of her holding a little pumpkin. It's a really cute picture, and the caption says, "Happy Halloween." And Gabby's mother confirms that this is the last time that she spoke to her daughter, in which Gabby told her that she and Brian were in Grand Teton National Park in Wyoming. There is one more text message after the 25th that is sent to Gabby's mother on August 30th, so 5 days later, in which Gabby tells her mother that she and Brian are on their way to Yosemite. And Gabby's parents, her entire family, don't believe that this actually came from Gabby. They believe that Brian sent this text message because there was no indication that the two of them were ever going to Yosemite. And as we know now, Gabby most likely had been missing at this point. So there was one final text message, again sent on August 30th, but it is widely believed to be a text message that was sent by Brian from Gabby's phone and not actually from Gabby herself, because at this point, whatever her fate was had already happened. Whether that be Brian having done something to Gabby or Brian having left Gabby somewhere. Either way, we know that the two of them were separated at this point based on an account that we have from someone else that I'll get into in a little bit. Just 2 days later, Brian returns home to Northport, Florida in the van, in the white Ford van. He returns home like nothing's happened, but Gabby is nowhere to be found. She is not with him, and he at this point hadn't notified anyone that she was missing or that she wasn't with him. And obviously that's extremely suspicious, but I promise y'all it gets worse. 10 entire days pass after Brian gets home in Florida. 10 whole days pass where Gabby has not been heard from. Her parents haven't heard from her. Her parents actually have been, between this time, the 10 days that are passing from when he gets home, they're making attempts to reach out to Brian and his parents to find out if Gabby is okay. And they hadn't gotten a single response, even though Brian was at home at this point. So they finally decide to report her missing on September 11th. And they just think that it's extremely weird that no one was getting back to them. There was no correspondence from Brian or his parents or from Gabby. So they really don't know what's going on, and they decide to get the police involved. When the police report to the home of the Laundries, they are met with Brian's parents, who refuse to talk to them, refuse to give them any information, but instead refer them to their lawyer, who they had already retained before the police even came to question them. So clearly the Laundries know something, because had they been totally in the dark about Gabby disappearing, they would have responded to communication from Gabby's family. That's number one. They most likely, number two, would have cooperated with police. And number three, they definitely would not have retained a lawyer prior to police showing up on their doorstep if they had absolutely no idea that nothing was wrong. They clearly knew that something was wrong, and they were trying their best to protect their son. Police confiscated the Ford van that Brian came home in that belonged to Gabby, and they took it in for evidence. And police attempted to communicate with Brian on September 11th. And I want to remind y'all, this is very fresh. This is 8 days ago from when I'm recording this video. This is very fresh, very new information. So September 11th, police attempt to communicate with Brian. He refuses to cooperate. He is not saying anything, not even in the presence of his lawyer. He is not saying anything. He's released a couple of very extremely vague statements, but he's not sitting down and helping the police find Gabby. So finally, the police deem him a person of interest on September 15th. He has not been declared a suspect, but he is a person of interest. And police have very publicly expressed their frustration, because not only is he not helping, but he is now hindering the investigation by refusing to tell police the last time that he saw Gabby. Because with that information, they can begin a search. They aren't necessarily saying that he had something to do with it. They just want to know the last time he saw Gabby. Did you leave her somewhere? Did you guys get in an argument and you just decided to disappear? And this is a possibility, because one of the arguments that he and Gabby had before, she got upset because she was worried that Brian was going to leave her in Moab. So the possibility of him leaving her somewhere, obviously we know that that is a possibility. So if you didn't do anything to her, if you just left her somewhere, right, and she just went missing, that information could be critical to finding her, because we are still in the early enough phases where if she was left alive somewhere, she possibly still could be alive. So the frustration from the police department as well as Gabby's family is enormous. On September 16th, the Petitos write a letter to the Laundries begging them as parents to please help them find their daughter. And the letter reads, "We are writing this letter to ask you to help find our beautiful daughter. We understand you are going through a difficult time and your instinct to protect your son is strong. We ask you to put yourselves in our shoes. We haven't been able to sleep or eat and our lives are falling apart. We believe you know the location where Brian left Gabby. We beg you to tell us. As a parent, how could you let us go through this pain and not help us? As a parent, how could you put Gabby's younger brothers and sisters through this? Gabby lived with you for over a year. She was going to be your daughter-in-law. How can you keep her location hidden? You were both at Jim and Nicole's, who is Gabby's mother and stepdad, house. You were both so happy that Brian and Gabby got engaged and were planning on spending their lives together. Please, if you or your family has any decency left, please tell us where Gabby is located. Tell us if we are even looking in the right place. All we want is Gabby to come home. Please help us make that happen. Signed, Jim Schmidt, Nicole Schmidt, Joe Petito, and Tara Petito, who are Gabby's parents and both of her step-parents. And you can hear from the tone of that last paragraph, please, if you or your family has any decency left, please tell us where she's located. You can tell that they are fed up. So they're not just sad and looking for Gabby. They are pissed off because the Laundries are being so unhelpful, like just so uncooperative, to the point, again, where, like I said, they are hindering the investigation. They're not only not helping, they are literally hindering the investigation. So the Petitos are infuriated, and they have done interviews. They have been very outspoken about how they feel about the Laundrie family, and they truly feel like the Laundries know more than they are letting on. I can't imagine the anger that I would feel as one of Gabby's parents, because knowing that they're not helping is infuriating enough, but knowing that Brian was home all those days without Gabby, and the Laundrie parents, Brian's parents, didn't think that it was important to notify anyone or just to send a text like, hey, Brian's not really talking to us, but Gabby's not here, I don't know what's going on. Like, literally anything. That's infuriating, because that time, those 10 days from when Brian got home without Gabby to when finally Gabby was reported missing were crucial. They could have made the difference in the search. That could have been the difference between life or death for Gabby, literally. So the Petitos are very much angry, very infuriated, and not just them. This is a national uproar. Like I told you, I heard about this case on Twitter, and who I follow on Twitter, it's not even true crime people at all, really. It's like my Twitter account that I've had since high school. I haven't actually followed any new people in a long time. So people were tweeting and retweeting this tweet about what happened here. It goes to show you that there is a lot of interest in finding Gabby. There is a national outcry. There is probably an international outcry. I'm sure that people around the world have heard about her story, and it's not looking good for the Laundries. They need to come forward and tell people what they know. I try to keep my opinion out of this as much as possible, but I'm also a human, and when things don't look right, they just don't look right. The only person from the Laundries family to come and speak out about any of this is Cassie Laundrie, who is Brian's sister. She's done interviews publicly. She has done FBI interviews as well. She has done FBI interviews as well, and she's basically said that she doesn't know anything at all. She doesn't know where Gabby is. She doesn't think Brian had anything to do with it. She thought the two of them were good together, and she hopes that Gabby returns home safely and that Brian had nothing to do with this. As the days go by, those two possibilities get slimmer and slimmer every day. But I say all this to say the one person who did speak out from the Laundries family was absolutely unhelpful. It's nice that she's communicating and she's not hiding, but she didn't really have anything to offer to help us in finding Gabby. Just to jump back a little bit, there was a couple that was found passed away in Moab around the same time that Brian and Gabby were in that area and actually got stopped by the police. And the couple had actually reported that they felt like there was a creepy man that was following them, and they felt threatened by this man. And then not long after that, they were found passed away. And people were thinking that maybe there was a connection between this other couple and Gabby going missing. Well, this other couple passing away and Gabby going missing. But the police have come forward and said that there is no link. However, people think that it's a little too much of a coincidence that these two people who maybe could have been a witness in Gabby's disappearance, or maybe have seen something that Brian had done, passed away around the same time that he was in the area. But fast forward back to present day, September 17th, which just passed. Finally, the Laundries family decides to speak to police. And what do they call police for? They call to report that Brian is missing. And they call to report that Brian's missing because the last time that they heard from him or saw him was on September 14th, 3 days before they called to report him missing. And on that day, the last time that they saw him, he let them know that he was going to be leaving the house to go out for a hike in about 13 miles from their home, I believe. And he hadn't returned. So they call, and because he is not a suspect in this case, he is only a person of interest, they have to open his missing persons case as though he is totally an innocent man, because at this point he still is an innocent man until proven guilty. So Not only is there a missing persons investigation and active search effort for Gabby, now police have to put their time and their energy and their resources into a missing persons investigation for Brian. And almost everyone, including Gabby's family, have the impression that Brian is not missing. Brian is hiding. Brian is running from the consequences of Gabby's disappearance. And Gabby's parents have been very outspoken about this, like they have been about everything else. They made a statement saying that Brian is not missing. Brian is hiding. Gabby is missing. And it seems like that's the general consensus. But it's very interesting that he did go missing after going on this hike. So there's a search effort currently in Florida around the area that he went on this hike, which apparently is this huge like nature area that is many miles to search. It's very wet. It's in Florida. It's probably swampy. So that's happening. And then there's a huge search happening for Gabby in Wyoming. Protesters have been outside of the Laundrie's home chanting, "Where is Gabby? Tell us what you know." They are putting pressure on Brian's parents to come forward and speak to the police about anything that Brian may have told them about Gabby's whereabouts. And the neighborhood, like I told you already, everyone in the country is kind of outraged by this and not sure how he's gotten away with it even for a day. But people in their direct neighborhood are even more upset. And since they know where the Laundries live, they are protesting outside of their house. Police have served search warrants and they have emerged from the house with bags of evidence. And it seems like Brian, being this person of interest, not an official suspect yet, but person of interest, is the main person who is getting all of the questions thrown at him because he was the last known person to see Gabby. There is a woman named Miranda Baker who posted on TikTok that she saw Brian in Grand Teton National Park, and she's stating that he was claiming to be a hitchhiker, that he said he had a fiance but his fiance wasn't with him at the time, that he told Miranda and her boyfriend that he had been just out hiking, sleeping on a tarp by himself for a few days now. But she thought it was weird because he was very clean. He smelled fine. He wasn't stinking. He wasn't dirty. He didn't look like a man who had been out hiking and camping out on a tarp for 3 days. And he only had one bag that had basically nothing in it. It was like a half empty backpack. So she thought it was weird. And another thing that she thought was weird was he asked to to get a ride from them about 10 miles away and offered to pay them $200 for that. She thought that was a little odd, but was like, okay, whatever, we'll give you a ride because we're going that direction. But apparently when he got in the car, he started getting weird. He got antsy, and when they were talking about where they would drop him off, he just told them that he wanted to get out of the car really quickly. And Miranda and her boyfriend, while they thought it was a strange interaction, they kind of just let it go until they saw all of this on the news and then came forward to tell police that they saw Brian and Gabby was nowhere to be found. This was the end of August. So this was 2 days before he returned home. And this is critical because whatever happened to Gabby probably happened on that day or around this time. And it gives police a little bit more ability to create a timeline, since they know for sure that Gabby wasn't with Brian on that day, if Miranda's account is accurate and Brian is actually the person who's claiming to be the hitchhiker. The whole disappearance of Gabby really struck her family as odd. Not just her disappearance, but also the behavior of Brian and his parents really struck Gabby's family as strange, because the relationship that Gabby and Brian had was pretty good. Like, they loved each other, they were in love, they were crazy about each other, and Gabby's parents were very supportive of their relationship. And Brian overall was a very respectful young man. He was polite to Gabby's parents, and they've spoken about that, how it's all just kind of come from left field, like this entire thing and the way that he's acting. The overall question is, if you are innocent, why not help? Why not help? If you're innocent, why not tell the police the last time you saw your fiance? If you stranded her somewhere and you feel guilty about that because now she's missing, why not tell police the last time that you saw her so that they have a place that they can start? All of those questions lead you to the final question of, well, if you're not cooperating at all, then did you do something to Gabby? Because any innocent person is going to want to cooperate on some level, whether that be through their lawyer. Fine. He's not cooperating at all. He's not even letting his lawyer give the police information, which does not make sense. And it leads everyone to think that he is involved in this and that there is something very sinister at play here. And anytime there's a case like this, Maya Millette is one of the main ones that comes to mind. It infuriates you, because if he would just talk, then we probably would have found her by now. And him not talking just kind of gives you that sinking feeling that Gabby's not okay. But we really don't know. And I'm hoping that this is resolved and that Gabby comes home and that there's justice if she does not come home. But hopefully, ultimately, she is safe and somewhere, just hoping that she is found. That's what I hope for. But it's not looking good. It's not looking good. We can't sit here and deny that. This case is ongoing. I will be sure to bring any updates to you that I find over the next few weeks. I'm sure that there is probably going to be an update after I post this video, because there's a lot happening and there's a lot of updates that are constantly coming out. So please, like I said, let me know what you think about this in the comment section down below. It's just one of those things where it's just, I don't know. You just have so many more questions than answers. And someone's lack of cooperation is making this impossible to solve, and it's infuriating, you know? So I'd love to hear what you think in the comment section down below. I never say this in any of my videos, but make sure you subscribe, because your girl's posting videos. I'm being pretty consistent. You know, sometimes I might be a couple days late, but overall your girl is hitting you with the consistency. So I need you to hit that subscribe button right now. It takes you less than a second. So go ahead and do that. Also, if you have any case recommendations, I take all case requests over on my Instagram. You can find me at sunnyshade.v. Following is not required, but that is where I build my list of cases to potentially cover. So please make sure you go slide in my DMs right now. Stop what you're doing. Go slide in my DMs right now. But without further ado, thank you so much for joining me today. You know what I'm gonna say. If you made it this far, you are loyal. You really are. And I appreciate you. I hope you have a wonderful morning or afternoon or evening, depending on what time it is when you watch this video. And I look forward to seeing you in the next one. Peace.